This is Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Mem Ches. We pick it up on the bottom of Mem Zayin and Mebez, about 13 lines on the bottom. The first one line is Behana. The learning should continue being an incredible schos or fuah shalema for Tinoik ben Miriam Ahuva b'soich sha'ar achayla Yisrael. Asks the Gemara Akasha on the price that we saw in this Amud Beis. V'kever animsa mutal lefanasai. We quoted a brisa, and the brisa says that a found kever is allowed to be emptied out. Asks the Gemara, is that true? But maybe Dilma meis mitzvah. But maybe it's a meis mitzvah, and umeis mitzvah kanami kaimai. Why are you moving the body? The halacha is that a meis mitzvah is kanami kaimai. The meis mitzvah acquires the place that it is in. So why are you allowed to move this kever that you found? Says the Gemara, shiny meis mitzvah is different. The kala is law, there's a call. People would know about such a scenario, and therefore if we just found a corpse, we found a kever, there's no reason to assume that it is a meis mitzvah. Continues the Gemara, itmar. We're coming off the sugya whether the ground is aser bahana, whether it's only bibinyan, if there's an area built on top of the kever. Says the Gemara, ha'ireg beged lemeis. Someone who weaves a garment for a corpse, but the corpse, the meis, is not as of yet put inside this garment. Abaye amar aser, Rava amar mutter. Machlokes Abaye and Rava whether you're allowed to change usages and move this baguette to use it for other purposes. Says the Gemara, Abaye amar aser, why? Hazmana milsi. Preparatory acts is considered significant. The preparation of it deems it significant, and therefore it's aser. It's considered a burial shroud. It's considered tachrichim. Rava amar motar hazmana la milsi. Says the Gemara, my time with Abaye, where did Abaye get his din from? Explains the Gemara, 7 lines to the bottom. Gamar Shem Sham Egla Rufa Gzeir Shafa Megla Rufa. Megla Rufa Bahazmana Misra. Just like by Egla Rufa, the calf itself becomes usher to anything else via mere designation. Hachanami. Here also says the Gemara, Bahazmana Misra. By designation makes it usher. By Yeshita, basic Zereshava of Shamsham. The Rava Gamar Shamsham Evadas Chavim. Rava says no. Rava says we have a different Zereshava of Shav Tavas Chavim. And what? Says Rava 3 lines to the bottom, Avas Chavim Bazmana Loi Misra. By Avodazara, mere designation does not make the item aser. Avachanami Bazmana Loi Misra. So Machlokes Abaye and Rava and Zereshavas. Is it Gzeir Shava from Egla Arufa? Is it Gzeir Shava from Avodas Chavim? And in the classical game of ping pong, says the Gemara, so why doesn't Abaye hold of Rava? Why doesn't Rava hold of Abaye? Rava, my time Gomer Egla Arufa. Why doesn't Rava learn from Egla Arufa? Amr Lacha responds Rava as we turn over to Mem Chazamira Liv Mishamshin Mi Mishamshin Gamrinon. Says Rava, we're looking for what is the status of tachrichin, a begin made from the mace, a mishamish, a server, an accessory. As Rashi in the top line says, a mishamish al mace from mishamish al v'zchavim gamrinan. We learn out, says Rava, that it's not aser v'yasmana. Lafuke egla gufa. The gufa kedusha. It's not an accessory. It's not a sidebar. In itself, by the egla rufa is aser. So says Rava, I'd rather not learn from there, and I'd rather learn from the Mishamshin of Chavim. V'Abaye, why does Abaye hold its aser? My time I asked the Gemara, L'Gamar B'Tz Chavim, the top of Emchesam and Alf, 3 lines down. Arm L'Chabaye responds, Midi D'Orche Gamrinon. Says that Abaye, as you look in Rashi, 5 lines down, Derech HaYehudim Lasos Kin. Avodazara Asura La'avoid Afla B'nei Noyach. Says Abaye, let's learn things that are normal. And it's not normal to serve Avodah Zarah even for Bnei Noyach. That's the machlokes Abaye and Rava, whether Azmana will be milsa, whether creating a beged for a mace creates an isser with it. And of course, we have a siman over here reminding us that simanim are not new. Many have joined the journey through the Zichru program, and we've been seeing incredible results. Continues the Gemara, middle of the Sugya. Rava says, Hazmana lav milsi. Abai says, Hazmana milsi. Meisvei asks the Gemara Kashan Rava. Says the Mishnah, Kipa shutame midras. A kipa over here, a kipa is referring to a tseif, Rashi says, which is a kerchief for a woman, is tamei midras. And Rashi points out, Shavshu royu lemidras, even though it's right to sit on it, Pamishav mekaplasa, if you yesheves alav, Einish enes reisha aleha, you rest your head on it, and therefore there is tumas midras being the tumah when something is lied upon. V'nasnu l'sefer, and she gives her kerchief to be used as a scroll cover, a cover for a Torah. Tar mina midras, then it's no longer tumah midras. Aval, however, tamei maga midras. It has tameh maga midras. So what do we see? We see that when it was designated, asks the Gemara and Rava, when they took this seif, they took this kerchief, and they gave it to use as a sefer Torah, they didn't do an act. It's designation. It's hazmana. And what do we see? We see the tumah changes. Clearly asked the Gemara and Rava Hazmana Milsa. He answers Rama Ema Nisanatoi Vikarachtoi. You didn't just give it over, says Rava, but you actually did a Maisa. You wrapped the Torah in it. Says the Gemara Lamali Nisanatoi Vikarachtoi. Why would it be necessary to do that? If she did it, then of course, then even the designation prior. So why did she have to give it, designate it, and then utilize it for the Torah? Explains the Gemara, 10 lines down, the first one line is Kid Rav Chisda. Tiyamar Rav Chisda, Haisudra. Says Rav Chisda, Haisudar, about the Azmanei Lemeitzer Beit Tefillin, that you created it, you designated to put tefillin in it, if it's Sar Beit Tefillin, and you actually wrapped your tefillin in it. Says the Brisa, says Rav Chisda, also Lemeitzer Pshitei. Once you designate it for tefillin, you're not allowed to subsequently use it for coins. So says the Gemara, the same is going to be for a kerchief. It's not going to be changed until you change the designation and you do it. So the Gemara is answering that Eino Chanami. It's true. 2 steps are needed to change the designation. 1, you have to give it over for the new purpose. And 2, you have to actually do a Maisa for it. Says the Gemara, so clearly Rav Chisda is holding like Rava, that has mana la milsahi. Says the Gemara, Olabaye, Pshita Azmane, Velo Tsarbe, Tsarbe Velo Azmane. 1 second, I skipped. Let's go back. Kid Rav Chisda, I asserted the Azmane Beit Tefillin, Tsarbe Tefillin, Atzal Beit Pshiti. Azmane Velo Tsarbe, I apologize, I didn't read the words that were the Raya. Tsarbe Velo Azmane, Charle Beit Pshiti, so we need to do both. Asks the Gemara, according to Abaye, if you actually used it, it needs designation. So going to Abaye, you're not going to need both. One will suffice. Says the Gemara Tashema, another ayat to Abaye, Kasha and Rava. Nefesh, nefesh, which is a structure for a kever, was built for a person who's alive, mutter behana. You're allowed to get benefit from it. But if you added on to it a row of stones for a person that dies, aser behana. So what do we see over here? We see that once it's designated for the mace, and I know people are starting to conjure up 1 second, is it called designation? You did a maisa. Let's get there. But the kasha, the havamina of the Gemara is that it was designated for the mace, and it becomes aser behana. Answers the Gemara, what are we talking about? That what? Diramu be mace. You actually put the mace in it, so it's not just Azmana. Says the Gemara, if that's true, my Yosef wanted to say that you add on a row of stones. Ki Yosef nami loy, ki Yosef nami, ki loy Yosef nami. Even if you didn't add on a row of stones, lemaisa. Once you put the mace in there, that itself should be enough to say it comes aser behana. Answers the Gemara, Lo yitzricha, says the Gemara, afal gav tipanye. The chiddush here is going to be, even if you emptied it out of the corpse and you transferred it, and there's no longer a mace over there, still it will be usher. And on this last detail, Amravim bar Papa, Amrav Chista, Imaya makirai cholzai umuter. If you recognize that row of stones, you could remove it, and then the whole structure reverts back to its original status, that it will not be usher anymore once the mace is removed. Tashema continues the Gemara smack in middle of Memches Amral. First one line is Makirai, another raya to Hazmana Milsahi. HaChoitzev Kever, says the Gemara, one who cuts at a grave loves for a father. V'holech v'kivrei b'kever acher. And then Lamaisi, you buried the father somewhere else. Harei zeh lo yikbar ba'y olamis. That kever cannot be used forever. Once it is created, once it is designated for a person, it cannot be used for anyone else. So what do we see? We see klar hazmana milsi. We see creation does something. Says Gemara, no, it's not why. It's a unique halach over here. Why? Hasam misham kavod aviv. Hachinam Mistavra proves the Gemara. This is logical. Take it on Iseva Rashba Goimer. Teaches Rav Shimon Gamliel have a chaytiv avanim love if you cut out stones for a father. If you give from a kamacher, Hariz Eloi Korbahem Ilamis. Amr Misham covered of it. Shabir makes sense. Amr Misham Azmana. Tevuya Lariga. Miika. Says the Gemara. Miika Lamanda Amar. If you're telling me it's Alsa Azmana, is anyone who says that spinning the threads, so creating the stones, hewing the stones will be enough? Of course not. And therefore, says the Gemara, must be because of kavod aviv. Continues the Gemara, Tashema, turning the tables and bring a raya to Rava that Azmana la milsi. Tashema kever chadash muter b'ana hitel boy nefel aser b'ana. What do we see? Only once you put the nafel in it becomes asrana, not the creation of it. So we see Azman Allah Milsi. He answers the Gemara, even if you didn't put the nafel in it. Meaning, this Bryce is not there to create the diuk that if you didn't put the nafel in that, it's there for the din itself. It's there to teach us that the stillborn krivit tvisas kever, not like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Tashema continues the Gemara about Moisar Amisim Lemesim. This extra, the excess, the surplus, that which is collected to bury a mace, should be used for other mason. Moisar Amis Liyarshav, the surplus for a specific mace then goes to his yarshim. So what do we see over here? We see again, it's merely Azmana, who's collected for one purpose, and we see we want to keep it in, says the Gemara, and we see you don't have to use it for that purpose. It just goes to the Yarshim, proving Azmana la milsahi. Answers the Gemara, Chamayaskinan, Shegavoy Mechaim was collected during their lifetime, and therefore everyone is masking Hazmana la milsahi. Says Gemara, B'haloi Tani Achi. We didn't learn this. Titnan, Meiser Amazin Lamazin, Meiser Amazin, last narrow line, Liyarshav. Utani Allah, we learned Tani Keitzad, Gabul Amazim Stam. Zeh Meiser Amazin Lamazim, the first case is when you just collected for Stam Amazim. Gabul Amazim Zeh. Zeh Meiser Amazin, Liyarshav goes to the Yarshim. But says the Gemara, we see you collected it for the mace. You can't tell me you collected it while the guy was alive. Responds the Gemara in the second white line, wait. For the way that you're going to tell me, look at the Sefer Rameir Rameir says what? Don't touch the money until Eliyahu comes. He says, Rav Nasan, use the money, make a monument over the grave. Or use it to sprinkle some wine. Use it for the mace or an alternative purpose. So says the Gemara, we see that the Azman is milsahi, that we're finding usages specifically for the mace. Elos, rather, says the Gemara, and Rava Mitaretz Tamei. Each one is going to explain what's going on according to his reasoning. Abaye Mitaretz Tamei Dekuli Alma Hazman Amelsi. He says, Abaye, everyone's masking to me. Tanikam Savar de Chazi Le Tafis or Chazi Le Lo Tafis. Says Abaye, I'll explain to you what's going on. Everyone really agrees as man as Milsi. But over here, we're saying is the corpse is only Tafis. Only grabs hold that which is needed. That which is not needed, which is the extra money, loy tafis lay. And Rameir misavkale tafis loy tafis. Says Rameir lo yigba chevalio. And Rav Nasan pshit lay devade tafis. That's the dimas al kivroi. That's how Abaye is going to explain the three machlekes in this brisa. Rava comes along and Rava Mataretz the Tamei according to his reason. The Kuli Amma, 4 lines at the bottom, has mana la milsi. Tanikama Savaki Bazule Achule Michal Zilute. Says Rav, you know that Tanikama holds Ki Bazule, if it's in a cause of bizayon, it's a cause of degradation. To have to collect money publicly. Achule Michal Zilute Gabi Yarshim. So then he's Michal for the Yarshim. Rameir misafkale nachamali machlele machlele kachle. Agatale yo comes van v'chulu. Ranasam shitale lo mechal kachastim was hakever azilav. Name Tasa. So proves the Gemara we can't bring a raya from this brisa. Both Abaye and Rava will explain according to their own reasonings. Tashaman, the last line continues the Gemara. Bring your raya. Azman alam milsi hayu. Aviv the imai. Mizarkin boy kilim. Father and a mother throw excessive garments towards the body of their child. Talking of brisa, child Rachmana litzlan is nifter, and what do? The parents just start throwing everything away. They can't handle it, and what they're trying to do is make everything usher like the mace. Says the Gemara, mitzvah ala achirim la'atzilan. It's a mitzvah. It's incumbent upon other people to rescue these garments. Don't let them be buried with the body. Says the Gemara, clearly, Azman Allah Milsi. Because if Azmana was Milsi, then these garments would become Asr once they're thrown by the parents towards the mace. Says the Gemara, as we turn over to Memchesem Ebeis, awesome, you know what's going on over there. Explains the Gemara, Misham Mirarahu. Over there, it's a special reason that the parent have this bitter anguish. The parents are doing something quite ridiculous. And that is the reason why it's a mitzvah to say them, but it wouldn't bring a raya to a regular case of Azman and Milsa. Yachi asked the Gemara, Allah, if this is true, that which we said, that what? Amar Ashbag, B'medvar Mamurim, Shlo Nagu B'mita. Says Rav Shimon Gamliel, that when is this true? When it didn't actually touch the body of Nagu B'mita, it's Asurin. Says, I don't understand. Why is it Asurin? Explains the Gemara, Terguma Ula b'mita anikveres imai. We're talking about the meat that's buried with the mace, the mechalfi b'tachriche hameis, and therefore they might think that this clothing is actually the tachrichem, and that is the reason why that which touched the mace, we're going to say, will be aser. Continues the Gemara, trying to bring rayas, Hazman Milsi, Hazman Alam Milsi, 5 lines down, Tashima. Similar to right that we had in an Aleph, a pouch that is made for tefillin. Aser laniach ba'i ma'is. Aniach ba'i tefillin. Once you put the tefillin in, then yaniach ba'i ma'is. You can afterwards put money in it. Meaning, when in the second case, you'd actually make it for tefillin. You made a stama back, and then you went and you put tefillin in it. Yaniach ba'i ma'is. The mere action of putting it in does not make that you cannot subsequently put anything else into it. So what do we see over here? We see in the first case that has mana milsa. You made it for tefillin. Also yech by ma'is. Says the Gemara, no, ima. You have to say aso v'en yech by tefillin, then also yech by ma'is. Kid Rav Chisda, as we saw on Amud Aleph. Tashima another raya Amar Luman Asili Tikshal say fair. You told Anuman make a chest for us for Tayroinar Tikshal tefillin. Or a case for a tefillin. Says the Bryce. Before they actually use for the terror for the tefillin, kadosh. That use it for mundane purposes. So what do we see? We see klar that Azman Allah Milsa, the making of it, the designation of it, the commissioning of it, is not enough till to actually use. So finally, after all these rayas back and forth, Mem Chesem and Beis, about 15 lines down. The first one line is Tanoi concedes the Gemara that Brisa is a raya to Rava, but I'll tell you there's other rayas to Abaye. It's a machlokes Tanoim. Titania, we learned in a Brisa, Sifon Azav Oshatala Alein Arshal Behema. Says the Brisa, if you cover the tefillin with gold or you made cases out of unkosher animals, Tameya. Behema, excuse me, Psulis. Our behema Taira Ksheres. Afal Bishla, even Lishma, even if it's not made. Lishma. Rashba Goimer says Rishim Gamliel. Half bar behema Taira Psulis. Achi Avdon Lishma until it's made Lishma. Machil Rishim Gamliel and the Tanakama. So what do we see? We see according to Rishim Gamliel, Hazmana as Milsi, whereas according to Tanakama, it's not. So Machlekes Abaye and Rav is going to be the same Machlekes Rishim Gamliel and the Tanakama. Continues the Gemara. Going back to the original case of Abaye and Rava, the original case of the tachrichim that are being oreg, that are being woven for the sake of the mace. Says the Gemara, Amar le Ravina le Rava. Ravina says to Rava, Mi kadochta. Is there really a case to Ramu be mace? Is there really a case where they put the corpse aside, va'argu beged le mace, and they weave burial shrouds for the mace? Says the Gemara, I don't understand. If that's what you're going to do, it's going to take a lot of time to bury the body, and the body's going to be waiting for a kfura. So why are you arguing about such a case? Amar le, Rava responds, indeed it is possible, says Rava. Kigoin, for example, that what? Shachli d'Arpanya. The dead people in Arpanya, that's exactly what they do. That after someone was nifter, then they collected money, and then they would bake the tachrichim. Darash Meremar, finally wrapping up this sugya. Darash Meremar, Kavasei Dabaye, V'Rabbanan Kavasei Derava. And the Hilchsa Kavasei Derava concludes the Gemara, Hazmana Lav Milsahi, like the Shita of Rava. We begin a new sugya regarding Mayrid b'malchus of the Melech. Says the Gemara Tanarabanan, Haroge malchus, someone who's being killed by the government, nechseim the Melech, his properties go to the king. Haroge bazin nechseim the Yarshin. Rav Yehuda Aimer Haroge malchus nechseim the Yarshin. So we have a machlokes where the properties of one being killed go. So Amr le Rav Yehuda Chum said to Rav Yehuda v'lo kvar nemar. What do you do with the pasuk that says Hinei bekerem nava yered sham lirosh yered sham lirishtai? What do you do with the pasuk that says the Achav is in the vineyard in the kerem of Navais? He went down to inherit it. So what do we see? We see that someone who was married b'malchus and the king inherited it. Amr lehen Rav Yehuda responds, Ben achi aviv haya. It was the father's son of the father's brother of Rayoli Yarshe. He actually was Rayoli Yarshe. There were many children. The way you learned the Brisa goes to him and the other children. Isai. As Banav Harag, they were killed. Shenemar Emloi as Demei Navos as Banav Ra'isi. And that's the reason why I went to that child. Says Imar V'Rabbanan. What are they going to learn? Ahu Banim Aruyin Latzes Bimanu. Children that are right to come from him, but they weren't actually born from him. So says the Gemara, let's dive a little bit deeper for a few more moments of today's shiur into the story of Navais, who was on trial, who was accused of being Makalel, both HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Melech. Says the Gemara, in the last narrow line, that's the meaning of the pasuk that says what? Beirach Navos Al Giva Melech, Navos blessed, obviously blessed over here is euphemistic, blessed HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the king. Ella, but says the Gemara, wait, the Mandarman saying the Yarsha, the properties go to the Yarsha, Ma Lama Li Umelech. Says the Gemara, why is it necessary that he was Lamali Umelech? Why do you need the second detail? The same go to the Yarshim, then what's the difference? Says the Gemara, L'Taimech, I don't understand. Elokim Lamali. Ella Lafushe Rischa. Must be decrease the anger. Achanaim Lafushe Rischa. Truly, it doesn't really make sense. That was the story to increase the anger of people against him. Says the Gemara, Bishlam Lamandar Benachsein Lamelech, I know they'll say, and he grabbed it over to the corners of the Mizbeach. Who said in the Basik said, I'm not going to go out keep he Oh, Mois, I'm going to die over here. Yoav wanted to die by the Sanhedrin, not by the Melech. Why? Because according to his opinion, where does the possessions go? It goes to his Yarship. Saying the Yarship, even when killed by the king, might have Kolami. No, why did Yoav care whether he's being killed by the Bezin or being killed by the king? Says the Gemara, L'chayisha. Just he wanted to live a little bit longer, and that's why he cared. We'll stop over here. We'll continue a little bit more with the story of the execution of Yoav in the next year, Mirza Hashem.